And welcome back, everyone. And what we thought we'd do tonight with the inauguration, obviously this coming Tuesday, is take a look back to history. Everyone who's close to Barack Obama knows he is a student of history, and specifically both Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt. And we're rejoined, of course, by David Woolner from the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Institute, the executive director. And honestly, somebody who knows FDR and the history as well as anybody I know. He talked, FDR did in that address, about how we got into the mess. And it was important because we've seen the bank runs at this point and we've seen the fear. And it was important to point a finger to say, I'm not blaming you. There are other people here. Let's take a listen to this next clip from the inaugural address with FDR.
Primarily, this is because the rulers of the exchange of mankind's good have failed through their own stubbornness and their own incompetence, have admitted their failure and have abdicated. Practices of the unscrupulous money changers stand indicted in the court of public opinion, rejected by the hearts and minds of men. And there must be an end to a conduct in banking and in business which too often has given to a sacred trust the likeness of callous and selfish wrongdoing.
You know, it's eerie, David.
It really
some
is.
of the things that we were talking, just think this week about the frustration from both Congress, but the American people about the transparency right now. Even after the mess that many people believe the Wall Street got us into, we don't know where the bailout money's going. And then on top of that, they want reform and they want accountability. All three things that we just heard in that clip to the public to say, I know. I get it. I know why you're mad, and you should be mad, and we're going to change things.
Absolutely, and it is fascinating to listen to. The issue of confidence, the issue of transparency, the issue of responsibility, of obligation, of sacred trust, as he said. These were all themes that Roosevelt would hit upon again and again, not just in this speech, but over the next 4, 5, 6 years.
Next, the one thing we've heard here is, and we even heard it when Obama gave his address on the economy, is we can't waste time. We have to move forward. We have to move forward quickly. That same touchstone was hit by FDR when he called for action and immediate action at that. Again, let's take a listen to FDR in his first inaugural address.
Restoration calls, however, not for changes in ethics alone. This nation is asking for action, and action now.
And David, give an idea here, because this first 100 days is really born out of this. I mean, when we talk about big ideas, new deals, and major action.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, he wrote the book on action, and the whole phrase 100 days in this context comes out of the Roosevelt legacy. And every president since has been measured in this 100-day increment. What have they done to match Roosevelt's record, which is really unprecedented.
Rattle off for the audience, just so they understand how the landscape changed in those 3 years.
It was dramatic. I mean, you had 15 major pieces of legislation. Some of it was called emergency legislation, but the banking legislation, the securities legislation was, you know, in place for 70-plus years. Some of the tinkering that's gone on in recent years, I think, is why we're in the mess we're in.
What always struck me is he literally erected trees so that what became the middle of America, that was the Dust Bowl, all of a sudden, instead of being, you know, the Dust Bowl, it all of a sudden could grow. He turned the lights on. He built it up. We're people about doing shovel ready now. Give an idea to then what was the shovel ready project.
Absolutely. I mean, he transformed the landscape of the country. In response to the Dust Bowl, as you said, they planted over 6 billion trees and stopped the soil from blowing away across the country. But, you know, roads, schools, airports, so many of the things that we now take for granted, the infrastructure of this country was built by the New Deal. It's very interesting. For example, electricity was a big project. 9 out of 10 farms in the United States in 1933 had no electricity. When Roosevelt died in 1945, 9 out of 10 farms in the country had electricity. Exactly the opposite. And I can't help but think, you know, President-elect Obama's discussion of broadband, of expanding the internet, of investing in these kinds of things.
Giving every home interconnectivity here, right?
Absolutely. And Roosevelt mentions that right in the inaugural address. He says we're calling for action now, and what are we going to do? And he talks about home foreclosures. He talks about saving farms. He talks about building roads and the infrastructure of the country, and he talks about expanding the electrical grid.
Finally, David, if FDR could whisper in Obama's ear here a little bit of advice before he gives his address, not just with the words he uses, but what he's about to inherit and what he should always remember, what do you think it would be? Because people say it's unprecedented, but we've seen there are precedents back in the 30s for what FDR obviously walked into.
I think he would say keep talking to the people. I think Roosevelt firmly believed, he had faith in democracy in a world where democracy was under threat. He says that at the end of the speech. He had faith in democracy, he had faith in the people and the judgment of the people, and he wants to be the instrument of the people. He's essentially saying, we need change, we need reform. These are the kinds of reforms I think that we worked out in my administration that are necessary. Give me the mandate to carry them out. That's essentially what the New Deal was all about.
To me, it's amazing. More than 3/4 of a century later, some of the parallels between then and now. And anyway, David, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rich.